I feel like we gotta start transitioning a little bit to give our consumer opinion on stuff.
Okay.
And
Okay.
my consumer opinion, I feel like, has been interesting, especially now with COVID and everything, with releasing music. And a lot of artists, I feel like, don't know how often they should release music. So I wanted to ask y'all. I mean, what do y'all think? We'll start with singles. How often would you want to hear a new single from your favorite artist?
What if they're featured on somebody else's single?
Regardless, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, any new verse from your guy. Like I said, starting out with singles. How often do you think you should hear a new single from your favorite artist?
I think it depends on like how big they already are in the game.
Mhm.
Like,
Okay.
for instance, like the Coles and Drakes, they're probably not hopping on more than maybe like 3 or 4 songs a year, whether it's their own music or somebody else's, unless they release an album, of course. But like, if I look at somebody like a Rod Wave, like that just comes to mind.
Mhm.
I feel like every like few months he should drop a single.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know, every few months he should drop a single. Now, if you're a listen to your artist, I think you should probably drop a lot more often. You know, because you got to get your name out there, you got to get your music out there, try and build your fan base. You know, that's like when I see on TikTok, I be seeing people like with like music strategy plans and stuff. They be like, "You're an up and coming artist. You need to like release music like every like couple months."
Yeah,
that's what they be saying. So I feel like it just kind of varies on like your status in the game already, and you know that's really like that determines how much you should drop music.
Okay,
that's a good point. And it's funny. I'm glad you said 3 or 4, maybe times a year, depending on how big you are, because that was like my ideal number for somebody like Drake or whatever. Because I'm sure you guys remember like 2016. I think it was maybe, or maybe it was 2015, but like it was between If You're Reading This and Views. But it seemed like Drake was on like 4 or 5 songs in that gap that were like, and then I think like between Views and then More Life, he was on a bunch of stuff too. But that was kind of the same time Quavo was like on a bunch of stuff too. Because after Migos dropped Culture, it seemed like Quavo was on everything.
He was.
Yeah, he was on everything. But yeah, I think ideally it would kind of depend how big you are. But some of the other guys like Kodak Black, for example, he's a guy who he'll drop like little small projects every once in a while. It's like 3-4 songs a couple times a year. So I've always been a kind of a fan of like the EPs and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd say probably depending on your status, like Tyreek said. Okay.
And I like how you brought up too, Tariq, is like a lesser artist as far as like locally. Like think of your local artist. Like I was having this discussion with one of my friends too, and I was like, I mean, if it's somebody like you genuinely like their music and they're not big yet, I would love to hear something new. You know what I mean? Every couple weeks, once a month, like you feel me? You ain't really made it yet. And at the same time, like I feel like especially if you're still coming up, you still trying to find your style, you still getting better with your flow. Like I feel like hearing that progress from a smaller artist, I feel like is what we really want. And then like you said, an established artist, somebody that's obviously their style isn't going to change from a song they dropped 2 months ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if it does, somebody like a Kodak where they're like, nah, we got to drop this. Like that Super Gremlin song. Like it didn't matter. It didn't matter what he dropped before that. Like he was like, we got to drop this now. Like this has to be out now. So yeah.
It's actually funny to me too, because somebody like Gucci Mane, who is pretty established in the game, but like for a while it seemed like Gucci's was like always dropping like 3-4 albums a year. I'm like, how is this guy doing this? And here he has the status of like being a pretty big artist. And I think too, if we go back to probably our like middle school, elementary school days, but like even like Wayne was like established, but it seemed like that 2008 to like 2011, Wayne was on like everything. So there's like very few guys I see who are established and they do drop like that. This is really rare to see, but some of them when they do though, I mean it's really good, and some of them it's not good. So I mean
I mean that's what I did want to transition to as far as like albums, because I almost feel like you have to think separately of an album or a single, because you know people get on Kendrick's head for not dropping an album recently. He hasn't dropped in what, 5 years now, almost
5 years.
It's crazy to think that, but like at the same time though, if you have a good body of work, you always hear too, like you should promote the longevity of it, because that's kind of what will make you last longer. So what y'all think on that?
No, I definitely agree. Because like Cole and Drake, they usually take like maybe 2 years between drops, and
I feel like is normal for a mainstream artist.
Exactly. I feel like if you're established, like that's solid. Like that is good because you gotta let your music breathe a little bit. You know, you don't want to just drop something and then later this year I'm dropping another album. Like that's just kind of like, you know, discrediting what you just dropped. You gotta let like that marinate.
Yeah, that's a good way to think. Like, nah, that last one wasn't that good. Here's another one.
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind with this, bro, NBA YoungBoy. He drops so much music, and it's like, it's overwhelming to a point where it's like I like some of his music, but then it's like I'm not listening to everything he drops because he just drops so much.
Yeah,
like it can get a little overwhelming at times. That's why I think it's important for artists to find a balance. You know, once you are established, you know, just let your music breathe just a little bit as far as albums go.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I'm glad you guys brought up Kendrick because I was actually just having this discussion with a guy I work with the other day, and this guy's 42. So it's always interesting to me to like talk to older people who actually respect like the music from our generation. But I don't really think Kendrick. I don't think To Pimp a Butterfly like really got to breathe until like recently.
I didn't. Yeah.
Like recently, because it was like when all this stuff was going down in 2020, everybody's like, oh, well, why is Kendrick quiet? But you go back and listen to Pimp a Butterfly and you're like, oh, wait, he was talking about this in 2015. So I think like the last maybe 2-3 years To Pimp a Butterfly is really like solidified itself like in his body of work. And like Dan was like, okay to me. I was like, there's a couple songs that I like, but when I've got like gone back and listened to Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly, I'm like, wow, these have aged like super well. So I really don't have a problem with like, you know, Kendrick taking however long to drop because his music he's done before is so deep that it's like, you're not going to get everything on the first listen.
Yeah.
So I think it just really depends like the content of your music. And there's just so many elements of it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I was like, once again, trying to give our tips as a consumer to, you know what I mean, an aspiring artist or something like that. Like, I almost feel like Kendrick is a great example of he knew what he had in those albums. You know what I mean? He knew he didn't have to drop. He didn't have to drop something after Good Kid, Mad City. Like, he could have retired off that album. Like. Yep. So that's why I'm like, I feel like he's a great person to bring up to an artist that's like, oh, I'm about to drop an album this week. I'm about to drop an album this month. Like, and then what you said, Reek, was even better to say, like, you're almost discrediting your past projects by dropping more projects on top of it. And I kind of feel that, especially if it's somebody that is wanting to get established, is wanting, you know what I mean, that album to be the face of the artist. Yeah, I think that is something to take account for. Like, an album is a body of work that needs to be handled with care.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I like how you talked about Malik, like local artists, because one of my friends his album is actually dropping tomorrow or midnight tonight. We've been telling him in the group chat, like, yeah, you just need to like drop. You just need to drop music, like just drop as much as you can.
Yeah.
And I like how I've been seeing him get in the studio a lot more. He said he's got a lot of songs. He's got like a release plan on how many albums he wants to drop just this year alone. And I'm like, that's good because it's like, you know, when you're coming up in basketball, like you got to get shots up.
You got to get shots up. You got to put your time in for sure.
Exactly, man. So it's all the same, man. Like as a young artist, you got to get the shots up. You got to see, you know, what you throw at the wall if it's gonna stick or not. So
yep.
You know,
And that's
I like that point a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that's really it, man.
Nah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I thought about that one just before we got on. Like, yo,